Hello beautiful people, I saw a question on Lash Tribe, why structured sets or spike sets always take longer to do, and that is because there's a lot of planning that comes with it, and I just wanted to go through like a basic spiky style and show you how I would map it out. So step number one is to actually have your client sit in front of you. Because you want to determine where you want to place those spikes, and that's the best way to see what it would look like and to also create balance. So number one, have the client's eyes open and mark out with a surgical pen or perhaps a removable eyeliner and place little dots on the lash line where you essentially want the spikes to come up. Yeah. So let's pretend these are like the spiky areas that I want. And then the step number two is to determine what kind of shape you want to create, because you don't just want to throw on spikes. You don't know how long they have to be, and you don't know how they need to transition unless you know what kind of styling would suit their eye shape, assuming you know eye shapes and styling, obviously. Yeah, so just creating a spiky set for the heck of it without knowing the styling is usually not the best idea. So determine your styling, assuming we're doing a swept styling, which goes from shorter to longer throughout this area and then back to something a little bit shorter here. This is what we're going to create now the spikes for. So you have created your or determined your shape, and now you have marked out your spikes, yeah, that you want to create. So now the eyes are shut, you need to mark out number one, your spikes. So I literally just go in and determine I want a spike to be here, 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 and here. Could be more, could be less, depending on the actual look that you want to create. The more spikes, the more random it will look. The less spikes and the thicker the spikes, the more structured it will look. When I talk about the thickness of spikes, it really depends on, drawn here, depends on how many spikes you place like next to each other. So if you do like quite a thick spike like that, and then you have a fill line, this is what we call the fill line, which would be like your mega volume or volume lashes, and then you have another spike. This is like a really quite structured look, yeah. Whereas on the other hand, if you do a set where you have a fill line like this is like a swept styling. Assume this is a swept styling. I might make this a bit longer there. Okay, swept styling, and then you just have a few little baby spikes like that. This looks a little bit more fluffy, right? But yeah, that really depends on what you want to achieve and what the client is after. But let's assume we want to create those spikes following the structure of the styling, which is our swept styling. I would just go and determine what is the longest length I can actually use for the swept styling in the fill line. Again, the fill line is the shorter part. Yeah, this is the fill line. The spikes are determined by the fill line, and the spikes are determined by the natural lash health as well. Okay, so if your longest length, for example, would be in this area, because this is your swept styling, I would make my spikes to be the longest in this area, and then they would obviously drop down again depending on the styling that we chose. So in our instance, it's this kind of shape, which is a swept style. Okay, now if my fill line, for example here, would also transition like a swept style, and let's say the longest length that I'm actually using in this kind of area is an 11, then it drops down to like a 10 and a 9 in the outer corners, then it goes to a 10, a 9 and an 8. This is my fill line. Again, this is probably your volume or mega volume. That determines what kind of lengths I need for my spikes. So if the longest length in my fill line is 11, maybe from here to here, then I would go in and say, okay, my spike needs to be at least 3 millimeters longer, which would mean it's a 13, could be a 14. So this would be this spike here, because we have 11 in this area, yeah? And then, for example, we have 10 from here to here, we have 9 from here to here, 8 from here to here, 10, 9. That again determines the length of our spikes. So if we have 10 here, we need to be like a 12. If we have 9 in this area, we need to be at least an 11. That's our spikes. So 11, this would be still like a 12. I would still stick to a 12 here because we have 10 in this area. Then I would drop down I might add another spike here, an 11, and then here I would go like a 10, and then you could do a 9, for example. And then you might even still have 7 as your fill. So we need to have our spikes at least 2 to 3 mil longer. Why is that? Because once the clients open their eyes and we have something that we think looks quite long on the top, once they open their eyes, it usually disappears. And this is why we need to go quite a bit longer. And those spikes need to be applied on the top layer of the lashes as well. Yeah, you can't see that here now, but the top layer of the lashes, which means the closest lashes to you, where the follicle sits the highest. If they are applied on the bottom layer, it automatically makes it look shorter when they open their eyes. So we want to avoid that. Okay, and this is basically why this takes so much longer. You know, you're creating something from scratch. You need to emulate that on the other side. You need to make that look exactly the same as this. And this is why we are doing this when the client's eyes are actually open in the start, so that we make sure we are creating that perfect balance for them. Once the eyes are shut, you are marking out your spikes first, after you have determined what is the longest length in the fill line that we can actually use. Because we always need to work healthily, not overweigh the natural lashes. And oh, what I forgot to mention, for your spikes, what I usually like to use is a single lash in, for example, 0.15, or I grab 2 or 3 lashes together and pick them up in 0.05 or 0.07, depending again on the natural lash health. And I will pick them up, making sure that they don't fan apart. You can also use flat lashes as well for your spikes. So the close together, the more structured they are, and the more open they are and fanning out, the more random, unnatural, spiky, I guess, the set will look. And this is basically it. So yeah, this is why it takes longer, because you are structuring it all out. You're figuring out exactly what balance is and what it creates and how you do it. And let me know if this video was helpful, and good luck with all your sets. Until next time.